Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today with my review for Nioh 2. After 80 hours, 2 playthroughs, and 1 platinum trophy, I'm ready to sit down and talk about this game. Nioh 2 is everything I wanted Nioh 1 to be, from character creation to enemy variety, bosses, difficulty, expanding builds, looting, and multiplayer. It is masterful and is one of the few games where I immediately started New Game Plus after the credits had wrapped up. So what makes Nioh 2 so great from my perspective? We're going to get into all of that, beginning with the story. The story in Nioh 2 impressed me, and not from the standpoint of, wow, what gripping characters and amazing presentation. It's not one that I found myself deeply invested in, but setting up events for the first Nioh and your relationship with Hideyoshi and how that develops, it was actually entertaining enough to keep my attention, and that's not usually the draw with these types of games. Nioh 2's story covers most of Nobunaga's rise, mixing in more fantasy elements to assert its own identity. In the world of Nioh, humans and yokai roam together, empowered by what has now been discovered and called Spirit Stones. While the Spirit Stones can grant immense power, and you'll see various rulers of feudal Japan using them to their will, they will eventually lead to you losing your humanity. While it won't be the main attraction here, do take solace in knowing that you have a story that won't be nonsensical or intentionally super vague while leaning heavily on the gameplay. That said, Nioh 2's gameplay could handle all of the heavy leaning because it's just that damn good from top to bottom and will be the bulk of this review. What thrilled me most was how diverse and rewarding builds are. You have a diverse set of skills that impact a range of things you'll want to balance, such as health, ki, recovery speed, resistance to certain elements, equipment weight, which will affect how much stamina you use when you maneuver around in battles between sprinting and dodging. There's magic, ninjutsu, and all these skills also complement the weapons you'll be messing around with. So say you're like me and you want to do a magic build, well then you're going to be proficient with the Bloodborne inspired Switchglaive. Maybe you're going to focus on dexterity, and now in turn you will be more effective with the Kusarigama and have access to more ninjutsu abilities. The best part is that all of these options are fun and exciting, that they don't limit your character, so you can continue to experiment into any point in the game. I mean, look at the gameplay. I am swinging around a great axe while I am an agile build. Now, don't mistake Nioh 2's flexibility for what I like to refer to as the watered-down RPG approach. You can be anything and do everything. It intends to reward your dedication to honing a specific craft. Take a look at this skill tree here. It can be a little overwhelming at first, but the way it works is simple. As you invest time in using a weapon, killing enemies, assassinating enemies, you will gain proficiency, which will then convert into skill points, which you can spend in this tree. And this skill tree will allow you to unlock a variety of moves, do more damage to your enemy from behind, grapple attacks may do more, and it may feel a little more rinse and repeat as you dive into each tree. And note that some statistics are the same, but each one has a different niche that satisfies a specific user and type of build. And the experimentation and investment is in fact encouraged because you can save builds in Nioh 2 after you complete the game once, where there is the real metagame that begins. There are items that you can use to respec your character, so you can allocate those skill points once again along with wearing ideal equipment for that build, and the game will save that. So you can have a mage build, a ninjutsu build, a heavy armor build, all saved at the same time, and then start just switching around with them based off what you're in the mood for. It's a ton of fun, and once again rewards that time investment, but also allows flexibility, which is something you just don't see nowadays. It's either one or the other. Now, while what your character is going to be doing is fun, what of the levels in Nioh 2? Because in the first one, while I enjoyed it, there was a bit of rinse and repeat there. They are much more varied this time around, something that we're going to be mentioning a lot with Nioh 2. These levels also feature more verticality. That said, you're still going to stumble upon a chopped up version of the main story mission you just completed, but it's all optional content. And that's something I really liked about this game. It's all mission based. Nioh 2 isn't open world. Not every game needs to be open world, and I'm glad that the developers of Nioh realized that and thought that they had something good with the first game and carried it into the second game. Having tons of maps with tons of variety, whether it's using old locations from the first Nioh or bringing in new ones here to Nioh 2, creates a diverse amount of environment and exciting places to explore for the player, and I like that more than one huge open world. Combat itself is a lot more action-packed compared to other games within its genre, such as Bloodborne, Dark Souls, The Surge, and so on, utilizing a weak and heavy attack button with a low, mid, and high stance. Each of these stances varies in damage output and attack speed, but they're also useful for various scenarios. So a high stance in your Kusarigama weapon will allow you to hold triangle and then use that weapon to pull yourself into an enemy if they're heavier than you, or pull them to you if they're lighter than you. So take that alone as one of the many examples you can use based off stances and scenarios. There are also yokai abilities. These really change up the gameplay, giving the player a vast amount of power, and some are just vastly better than others, where you may not experiment as much as you would hope to. I won't spoil them, but let's just say there are some key boss figures that drop ones that'll need a bit more balancing of the time of reviewing this. Same could be said for some of the gear. I suppose this is how you classify the best from the worst, but there is an accessory I have that reduces the amount you need to complete an armor set by 1, and this will be mandatory for any endgame enthusiasts. For those who don't know what I'm talking about here, as you run around and kill enemies in Nioh 2, there will be tons of loot that explodes out of their bodies, and it's just like Diablo, where as you collect parts of armor, they're a part of a set, and as you gradually complete this set, you'll get specific bonuses, such as 15% bonus to your ninjutsu power, or another 10% to your attack speed for tier 2, and so on and so forth. Having an item that essentially reduces all of that is a must-have for every player, and stuff like that maybe fuels the RNG grind for some folks, but I do think it destabilizes some of the balance alongside these yokai abilities. Alright, so let's talk about difficulty / challenge, because I believe there is a difference this time around. Nioh 2 for me wasn't one of the most difficult games ever. A lot of bosses went down on my first try, quite honestly. That said, I don't believe I need to die 9 bajillion times to call a game hard. Each battle demanded my full attention, and my mistakes were fairly punished. Enemies hit very, very hard in Nioh 2. While I do think this game gives you a lot of power to play with, enemies dish it right back. So while Nioh 2 isn't nut-crunching difficult, it is one of the most consistently challenging games I've played in my lifetime. From the levels themselves straight to the boss, it is almost never a cakewalk. That's because it's not always the enemy that you're fighting that provides a challenge, but sometimes the environment you're exploring. You could be going through poison pools and have to figure out how to remove them in order to ease navigation throughout this specific section of the level and not put yourself at a disadvantage for the boss fight. There are times when a castle is shooting magic attacks at you from a mile out, and you're navigating a battlefield with enemies attacking you at the same time while avoiding said hazards. It's challenging because it consistently introduces new yet not impossible elements for the player to overcome. One of the new elements arriving to Nioh 2 is called the Dark Realm. Now, for those of you who have played the first Nioh, you'll be familiar with what's called a yokai pool. For those of you who have played Nioh 1, you'll be familiar with a yokai pool. Often, these yokai will spawn them on the ground, and if you're inside them, it'll actually slow down your ki recovery speed drastically until you purify it with a ki pulse, which is something you can do after finishing an attack. Now imagine that, except it's an entire room, an entire area, and the enemy that is causing this Dark Realm is very beefed up. However, if you take that enemy down, the Dark Realm will disappear. So there are these challenges like this popping up, and often heading into the main story objective, these are not mandatory. There are many times I was able to sidestep them. Keep in mind though, there are often shrines, essentially your bonfires in Nioh, that you can use, but they are out of commission if they are in a Dark Realm. So if you need that shrine badly, you may have to go in there and go for it. Some have claimed this is overutilized. I think it's a good challenge because it forces you to not go all out full aggression like the game's systems teach you to with its speed. The last thing I want to touch on is multiplayer. Co-op has received a nice bit of focus in Nioh 2, and there's always been this attack on the idea of bringing multiplayer to these challenging style of games. You're not good if you play multiplayer with them, but once I beat the game by myself, I really do want to play with my friends. What's great about Nioh 2's multiplayer is, say, my friend completed the mission, but I haven't. I can invite them into my world, and they can do the mission with me, and I like that. Sometimes I just play co-op with my friend, not because I'm having trouble trouble with the game, but because it was just fun. That was the way I wanted to play the game, and I really enjoyed Nioh 2's encouragement of that. There are also specific mechanics to co-op that I thought were well balanced. First and foremost is a revive bar, so when someone goes down, that bar will decrease, but if you can revive your teammate quick enough, you won't lose too much of that bar. Once the bar empties, it is all over. Or if all of your teammates and yourself die during, let's say, a boss fight and no one's able to be revived, the mission's completely over and you get sent back to the lobby. Now, what's the trade-off here? Enemies are spongier, they take a lot more hits, so there's some teamwork involved there. Often it's you just whacking away, but they don't hit harder, and that's something that I liked, because enemies in Nioh 2 already hit hard enough. But yeah, if you're looking actually for a good sneaky co-op game, you're gonna have to play the game sometimes by yourself, and I would encourage it in that way. But Nioh 2 can be played with friends based off how much you guys outpace each other, essentially. And personally, I like that. So if you have a friend who's grinded out all of the actual single player by themselves, and you're just hopping in now, you guys can play the full campaign together if you wanted to. I just helped a friend last night, as of the time of recording this, finish Nioh 2, and I thought that was really awesome it was allowed. Now with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for my verdict. If you couldn't tell, I really a million times like Nioh 2. I think it is a great game. I could absolutely see this sitting on my top 5 games, because even though this review is done, I just keep going back to the game. I love playing Nioh 2. It's just downright fun. Having multiplayer options, having the loot grab you, the combat variation, it's just all there, and it is such a good time. So I highly recommend, if you are looking for something good, Nioh 2 is absolutely worth your $60. And I'll conclude it there. Thank you guys so much for supporting the content, and I'll talk with you all soon. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.